Chapter 7 of the Story of a Soul. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anne Boulay. The Story of a Soul, the Autobiography of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, translated by Thomas Taylor. Chapter 7. The Little Flower Enters the Carmel. Monday, April 9, 1888, being the feast of the Annunciation, transferred from Passiontide, was the day chosen for me to enter the Carmel. On the evening before, we were gathered round the table where I was to take my place for the last time. These farewells are, in themselves, heart-rending, and just when I would have liked to be forgotten, I received the tenderest expressions of affection, as if to increase the pain of parting. The next morning, after a last look at the happy home of my childhood, I set out for the Carmel, where we all heard Mass. At the moment of communion, when Jesus had entered our hearts, I heard sobs on all sides. I did not shed a tear, but as I led the way to the cloister door, my heart beat so violently that I wondered if I were going to die. Oh, the agony of that moment! One must have experienced it in order to understand. I embraced all my dear ones and knelt for my Father's blessing. He, too, knelt down and blessed me through his tears. It was a sight to gladden the angels, this old man giving his child to God while she was yet in the springtime of life. At length the doors of the Carmel closed upon me. I found a welcome in your arms, dear Mother, and received the embraces of another family, whose devotedness and love is not dreamt of by the outside world. At last my desires were realized, and I cannot describe the deep, sweet peace which filled my soul. This peace has remained with me during the 8½ years of my life here, and has never left me even amid the greatest trials. Everything in the convent delighted me, especially our little cell. Footnote: Nuns, in the spirit of poverty, avoid using the word "my," as denoting private possessions. So, later on, our lamp, our handkerchief, will occur. Editor. End footnote. I fancied myself transported to the desert. I repeat that my happiness was calm and peaceful. Not even the lightest breeze ruffled the tranquil waters on which my little bark sailed. No cloud darkened the blue sky. I felt fully recompensed for all I had gone through, and I kept saying, "Now I am here forever." Mine was no passing joy. It did not fade like first illusions. From illusions God in His mercy has ever preserved me. I found the religious life just what I expected, and sacrifice was never a matter of surprise. Yet you know well from the beginning my ways were strewn with thorns rather than with roses. In the first place, my soul had for its daily food the bread of spiritual dryness. Then too, dear Mother, our Lord allowed you, unconsciously, to treat me very severely. You found fault with me whenever you met me. I remember once I had left a cobweb in the cloister, and you said to me before the whole community, "It is easy to see that our cloisters are swept by a child of 15. It is disgraceful. Go and sweep away that cobweb, and be more careful in the future." On the rare occasions when I spent an hour with you for spiritual direction, you seemed to be scolding me nearly all the time, and what pained me most of all was that I did not see how to correct my faults. For instance, my slow ways and want of thoroughness in my duties, faults which you were careful to point out. One day it occurred to me that you would certainly prefer me to spend my free time in work instead of in prayer, as was my custom, so I plied my needle industriously without even raising my eyes. No one ever knew of this, as I wished to be faithful to our Lord and do things solely for Him to see. When I was a postulant, our mistress used to send me every afternoon at 4:30 to weed the garden. This was a real penance, the more so, dear Mother, because I was almost sure to meet you on the way, and once you remarked, "Really, this child does absolutely nothing. What are we to think of a novice who must have a walk every day?" And yet, dear Mother, how grateful I am to you for giving me such a sound and valuable training. It was an inestimable grace. What should I have become if, as the outside world believed, I had been but the pet of the community? Perhaps, instead of seeing our Lord in the person of my superiors, I should only have considered the creature, and my heart, which had been so carefully guarded in the world, would have been ensnared by human affection in the cloister. Happily, your motherly prudence saved me from such disaster. And not only in this matter, but in other and more bitter trials, I can truly say that suffering opened her arms to me from the first, and I took her to my heart. In the solemn examination before my profession I declared, as was customary, the reason of my entry into the Carmel. I have come to save souls and especially to pray for priests. One cannot attain the end without adopting the means, and as our Lord made me understand that it was by the cross He would give me souls, the more crosses I met with, the stronger grew my attraction to suffering. For 5 years this way was mine, but I alone knew it. This was precisely the flower I wished to offer to Jesus, a hidden flower which keeps its perfume only for heaven. 2 months after my entry, Father Pichon was surprised at the workings of grace in my soul. He thought my piety childlike and my path an easy one. My conversation with this good Father would have brought me great comfort, had it not been for the extreme difficulty I found in opening my heart. Nevertheless, I made a general confession, and after it he said to me, "Before God, the Blessed Virgin, and angels, and all the saints, I declare that you have never committed a mortal sin. Thank God for the favours He has so freely bestowed on you without any merit on your part." Without any merit on my part! That was not difficult to believe. Fully conscious of my weakness and imperfection, my heart overflowed with gratitude. I had distressed myself, fearing I might have stained my baptismal robe, and this assurance, coming as it did from the lips of a director, a man of wisdom and holiness, such as our Mother St. Teresa desired, seemed to come from God Himself. Father Pichon added, "May Our Lord always be your Superior and your Novice Master!" And indeed He ever was, and likewise my director. In saying this I do not mean to imply that I was not communicative with my superiors. Far from being reserved, I always tried to be as an open book. Our Mistress was a true Saint, the perfect type of the first Carmelites, and I seldom left her side, for she had to teach me how to work. Her kindness was beyond words. I loved and appreciated her, and yet my soul did not expand. I could not explain myself, words failed me, and so the time of spiritual direction became a veritable martyrdom. One of the older nuns seemed to understand what I felt, for once she said to me during recreation, "I should think, child, you have not much to tell your superiors." "Why do you think that, dear Mother?" I asked. "Because your soul is very simple, but when you are perfect you will become more simple still. The nearer one approaches God, the simpler one becomes." This good Mother was right. Nevertheless, the great difficulty I found in opening my heart, though it came from simplicity, was a genuine trial. Now, however, without having lost my simplicity, I am able to express my thoughts with the greatest ease. I have already said that Our Lord Himself had acted as my spiritual guide. Hardly had Father Pichon become my director when his superiors sent him to Canada. I was only able to hear from him once a year, so now the little flower which had been transplanted to the mountain of Carmel quickly turned to the Director of Directors, and unfolded itself under the shadow of His cross, having for refreshing dew His tears, His precious blood, and for radiant sun His adorable face. Until then I had not appreciated the beauties of the Holy Face. It was my dear Mother, Agnes of Jesus, who unveiled them to me. As she had been the first of her sisters to enter the Carmel, so she was the first to penetrate the mysteries of love hidden in the face of our Divine Spouse. Then she showed them to me, and I understood better than ever in what true glory consists. He whose kingdom is not of this world, John 18:36, taught me that the only royalty to be coveted lies in being unknown and esteemed as naught. Imitation of Christ, Book 1, 2, 3. And in the joy of self-abasement. And I wish that my face, like the face of Jesus, should be, as it were, hidden and despised. Isaiah 53:3. So that no one on earth should esteem me. I thirsted to suffer and to be forgotten. Most merciful has been the way by which the Divine Master has ever led me. He has never inspired me with any desire and left it unsatisfied, and that is why I have always found His bitter chalice full of sweetness. At the end of May, Marie, our eldest, was professed, and Thérèse, the Benjamin, had the privilege of crowning her with roses on the day of her mystical espousals. After this happy feast, trials again came upon us. Ever since his first attack of paralysis, we realized that my father was very easily tired. During our journey to Rome I often noticed that he seemed exhausted and in pain. But, above all, I remarked